Hey everyone, it's Marla. Welcome back to Twinstrology. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today, and I'm going to be talking about some astrology, specifically the astrology of the moon. What does the moon mean? For many years, I've had requests from people to teach astrology, and it's something I've always been interested in, but I didn't quite feel guided. And now I feel guided to at least do a little bit of this. I don't know how far I'll go with this, how much I'll teach. I guess it depends on whether you guys like it and whether you're interested in it, or if I have some specific things that I'm guided to talk about. It may not be in like a certain specific order. It may just be like what I feel guided to do. I mean, I pretty much these days just live by my passions in the sense of whatever I feel creatively on that day is what I do. So, yeah, we'll see how this goes. So, I really wanted to start with the moon because the moon is so important and I feel very often underrated, right? Mostly we start with the sun, but I feel like everybody knows about their sun. It's very easy to know what your sun sign is because if you know the day that you were born, then you pretty much know what your sun sign is. There is some caveats with that. But with your moon, it's a little bit more difficult. If you want to know what your moon sign is, you have to actually run your natal chart. And some of you I know have done that already. Some of you maybe not. Some maybe don't know how or never really thought about it, or you don't know what you need. So actually at the end of this video, I'm going to put a little tutorial on how you can run your natal chart and figure out what your moon sign is. So yeah, you need to be a little bit more in depth to figure out what your moon is. And I think maybe that um, stops people from delving a little bit further. So I hope if you don't know what your moon sign is yet, I hope that this video encourages you to go and figure that out because the moon is very, very important. Of course, the sun and the moon are probably, I think pretty much undisputed. They're the biggest, most powerful forces in our chart. The ascendant as well is important. But why I'm choosing to start with the moon is because when we're ascending, we need to clear all of our patterns and triggers. And that means going deep into our subconscious, awakening ourselves to these things. And that energy is coming from our moon. So if we have an idea of what sign our moon is in, what house the moon is in, and if our moon is making aspect to different planets, then we'll get some insight into the things that are there that we need to clear. So let's talk a little bit about the moon. We'll start kind of with what the moon represents. Okay, so the sun and the moon are considered luminaries, but the moon doesn't actually give off light. The moon only reflects light. And so, in that sense, we can see how the moon represents a shadow aspect. And how I like to think of it is, the moon is a place that's dark until the light of the sun hits it. And if we think of the sun as a guiding spiritual force, our star, that which um, nurtures us and activates us, that awakens us, that brings in the light, then when the sun hits that moon and we start to awaken, we begin to bring light to that which has been dark or hidden or unconscious within us. So the sun kind of represents our identity, and then the moon is that shadow self. We can also see the sun and the moon as the god and the goddess. And another way that I think of the moon is has the goddess, the divine feminine, has slid deeper and deeper into unconsciousness. Of course, it's not anymore, right? Because the a large part of the ascension is awakening and bringing back the energy of the goddess. But let's talk about before that, right? The divine feminine was it was slowly being removed from our consciousness through how we were being programmed. And it's almost like the energy of the moon slid into our consciousness along with the energy of the goddess. But as we awaken more to that goddess energy, more and more, we're awakening back to the energy and the power of the moon and what it represents. And if we continue to think about our evolution in the ascension, eventually we're going to reach that place where that which was unconscious is conscious. You know, we will have awakened to these things about ourselves, or at least done a lot. I can't say when humanity is going to be completely awake and evolved to that extent, but one day it will happen. And so what will that mean for our moon? You know, and astrologically, all aspects of astrology are in a state of evolution because our consciousness is evolving and one reflects the other. So, I mean, esoterically, too, the moon is considered to be a veil for something else. And, you know, something is being hidden by the moon. And so when we reach that point of full evolution, then maybe that veil will be removed and we'll see, well, you know, what is this really covering for? So, yeah, I think that's an interesting way that I like to think about the moon's energy. There's also this wildness about the moon, right? This a lot of times mysterious things happen under a full moon. If we think about mythology, um, you know, witches dance under the full moon. People turn into a werewolf under the full moon. It has this power and this mystery, and it's connected to mm, kind of our dark. And I want to choose my words carefully because I'm not meaning to say that these things are necessarily dark, but in our human imagination, there's something that had become dark or become taboo because part of our human evolution is that we don't embrace the power that's there. We try to control because the moon is our emotions. I haven't gotten to that part yet, but we try to control these things. We don't want to let this wildness out. We want to be um, tamed because that's what we've been programmed to do. But think about that wolf man, right? You have a person that maybe is very mild manner and calm, and then underneath the energy of the full moon, he goes berserk and he turns into an animal. And that's representing our animal nature being released, our shadow side not being contained and controlled anymore. So we can see why um, we built this mythology of the moon that's a bit fearful. And I guess that's what I was trying to say when I spoke about the moon being um, dark. It's just that we're fearful of it. We're fearful of the power of it and what happens in the dark, right? Because the moon is always out at night. Another way that we can understand the energy of the moon is by looking at how it affects Earth. And one of the things that the moon controls is um, the tides, the oceans. And if we think about water, water is the emotional force. The element of water contains our emotions. And the moon raises and lowers the seabed, right? It shifts this, it brings it up and down. And we can see how our emotions fluctuate like the seas, and the phases of the moon play into this, right? And it plays into all water on the earth, even the water within our bodies. Um, the moon phases definitely affect us, and we can see that very clearly with menstruation and a lot of women's cycles being synced up with the phases of the moon. But water also represents purification, and we can't truly be purified unless we confront the energy of our own moon. So, yeah, a big thing that the moon controls is our emotional self, our subconscious, our need for security, our sense of nurturing. It's related to our mother. It's connected to our roots. So let's go deeper into this. So, all the planets are connected to a sign, and that sign is connected to a house. So the moon is connected to the sign of Cancer. That's the sign that it rules. And Cancer rules our fourth house. So you can think about Moon, Cancer, fourth house, all carrying that same energy. And in that sense, they're a little bit interchangeable. If you understand one, then you can at least make some really good inferences about the others. So, Cancer in the fourth house, very simplified, what that rules is your home and your family. And the fourth house is the darkest part of our chart. It's at the very bottom of our chart. Again, the moon doesn't have a light of its own. The moon is present in the nighttime, in the darkest part of the chart. So that's one way to help you remember that. And it's also because it's that dark time, it's our private time. It's where we go to feel safe and secure, hopefully. It's again where we can be ourselves, where we can let our hair down. And of course, home also connects us to our family. And the moon correlates with the energy of the mother or the most maternal figure to you. It's also about how you mother and how you nurture people. So, your moon sign and your fourth house, and where you have Cancer in your chart, is going to give you information about your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your family, and your relationship with home. Now, when we think about our mothers, we think about being nurtured, being nourished, being protected. And this is also the energy of the moon. How we nurture people, how we like to be nurtured, how we protect ourselves. what we need to feel safe and secure. How do we help other people feel safe and secure with us? How do we nourish ourselves? How do we nourish others? And nourishment can be spiritual nourishment, emotional nourishment, and it can be physical nourishment, how you actually feed yourself. So, um, Cancer in the fourth house and the moon can relate to our relationship with food as well. Like I said, emotions are, the biggest thing with the moon. And our emotions have to do with our triggers. Because when we're triggered by something, what's being activated within us is our emotions. And then our emotions take us back to another time and another place and what we experience then, and then we react from that. This becomes a pattern, right? Something happens that triggers us, and then it becomes a pattern for us. And we just, when that thing is triggered, we just go right back. We have the same type of reaction. So when I'm talking about um, emotional triggers, I'm talking about our instinct, how we react to something instinctually before we actually think about it. And a lot of times when we're triggered emotionally, um, we have a difficult time thinking about it rationally. And that's what can be difficult about triggers, is because sometimes you can't see it rationally because it's just like this force that takes you over. Or when you come down and you try to look at it rationally, it's not going to make sense because the moon energy itself is not rational. It's emotions. Emotions are not rational. There's something that happened instinctually. Now we can try to control them by repressing them, but they don't really go away. They just become hidden, and they become hidden in that dark part of our chart, that fourth house, Cancer place. But, you know, they're going to get triggered. They don't stay hidden forever. The moon also rules our moods. Of course, our moods are our emotions. Cancers, have a reputation for being very moody. I do have Sun, Mercury, and Mars in Cancer in my chart. And yeah, especially before I started my awakening journey, I was a pretty moody person and often triggered into sadness. And a lot of that would have to do with the phases of the moon, but also um, there's an empathy there, especially when your moon's in a water sign, especially, but sun, ascendant, other things in water can affect your levels of empathy with others. And there is a collective energy with the phases of the moon too that you can be drawn into, but then there's also our own moods. So moods are one of those things that we just have to make ourselves aware of them, and it's part of our growth, understanding what is happening to cause the fluctuation in our moods, because as we go through the ascension process and we heal these things, then we're not subjected to that up and down emotional energy usually. So another thing I talked about the moon representing was security, right? And the home being that place where we feel secure. Our moon sign can tell us about what things help us feel secure and what things help us feel insecure. And we're going to get deeper into that in part 2 of this video. Now, the symbol for Cancer is the crab, or the constellation of Cancer looks like a crab. And a crab has a shell. And there's a particular type of crab called a hermit crab that can change its shell. And the shell is like its little house, and it picks a shell and it carries the shell around with it. And we can think of that as like that energy of the moon or of Cancer, and wanting that shell, wanting a place to hide, wanting a place where we feel safe and protected from the outside world. And yes, that can be our safe place, but depending on where we're at with our moon energy, that shell can also become this defensiveness, this boundary, this barrier of keeping other people out, either because we don't want people to see these kind of shadow parts of ourselves, or we struggle with feeling safe because of our past lives and things that happened to us as a child, um, or even when we're very emotional. So, uh, our sense of security in life colors a lot about how we perceive the world. And we're always judging things. Is this something that I can do and feel safe doing it? Or is it something that's going to trigger me into feeling unsafe and into feeling insecure? And so we're always, looking at things. Is this safe and secure, or is it not? Our attachment to things is part of our moon energy. And of course, um, we can attach to a lot of things in order to feel a sense of security. Um, some of those things can become patterns. I mean, think about um, OCD, for example, obsessive compulsive disorders, and people that do something over and over again has a way of making them feel safe. So that can be a type of mental or emotional attachment. We can become attached to physical things to make us feel safe and secure. We can become attached to food. We can become attached to people. And all of these things are trying to create a sense of safety within us. Now, the moon, Cancer, and the fourth house is, if we think about its connection to family, okay, it has this very deep connection to family, not just our blood family, our immediate family, but on a soul level, it connects us to our soul family. And I like the metaphor of seeing the astrological chart has a tree, and the fourth house being the bottom of the chart as being like the trunk of the tree, and then these roots as going down, down, down. Now think about a tree and how the roots go down and they spread out. So that fourth house is not just the patterns that we develop in this life. Those roots go deep. Those are your patterns that you're developed in other lifetimes, or, you know, time is not linear. So those things are happening now. They connect us to the past people, past places, past lives, and how we've developed um, on that emotional pattern level. So, uh, this is so important I really want to emphasize that when you're trying to heal and trying to ascend, these are the things that you really want to focus on. And when you have a relationship with someone and they have planets in your fourth house, then that's a pretty good sign that they're soul family. And chances are that you're going to recognize that person has um, soul family right away. My twin's son is in my fourth house. And, that was like immediate recognition on a soul level. But even beyond that, um, I've always had this image, even before I knew anything about twin flames or a lot of esoteric stuff. I always saw him as an actual sun. I mean, like the star, like has this bright, brilliant star and shining this beautiful light on me. And that shows the power of the connection that you can have with someone in that fourth house energy. But we could probably take that a step further too, right? And say, like, okay, his son's in my fourth house. He also brought that energy of the light into the dark, like I was talking about at the beginning, how the energy of the sun, when it begins to infiltrate us and we awaken, it begins to light up these dark areas. So it was like, yeah, that energy of his son lit up all those dark hidden things within me. But yeah, so uh, that connection to your fourth house someone will feel like home usually, unless you've got some real serious karma there. The moon is also our inner child, or areas where we are childlike. And it can be that area of our chart where we're very needy and dependent on other people. So I was talking about those roots, right? Those tree roots, they lead down into our subconscious. That's where all these things are held, all the past lives, um, all our information is held there. So, understanding our moon is really about understanding our conditioned self, our habits, our reactions, our triggers, our emotional self. What are our patterns when we go into our emotional body? So, so, so important. Go back for a moment and think about that energy of the wolf man, right? And you can be calm, cool, collected. Suddenly something triggers you, and you go right back to those subconscious patterns. So, of all the planets, the moon moves the fastest, and the moon travels through a sign approximately every 2.5 days. Remember, the moon goes through a cycle approximately every month. It moves 13 degrees and 12 minutes every day, or about 1 degree every 2 hours. So, when you're trying to figure out what your moon sign is, it really helps if you have your time of birth. But what if you don't have your time of birth? Well, you can still try to run it and you can see where the moon falls in the chart. And I address this in the upcoming tutorial that I'm going to post at the end of this video on how to run your chart. So if your moon is around the center of the sign, then you're going to be okay. But for some of you, your moon might be on the cusp of two signs. And then you might have to learn about each sign and see which one you resonate more with if you absolutely um, can't get your birth time. So, our triggers, our emotions, our subconscious, this is complicated stuff, right? And there's going to be other things in your chart that play into this energy, but the moon is such an important place to start, especially too when it comes to relationship. And I know many of you watching this are twin flames or divine counterparts, and so you want to use astrology to help you navigate that connection. So to that end, what I'm going to do is post a part 2 of this video. And in that video, I'm going to talk about each moon sign and what is the most common trigger for that sign. And chances are, like, if you're that moon, you're going to have something connected to that trigger. Now, what you'll do is you'll use, okay, so say like moon in Aries. Okay, so if someone has their moon in Aries, their moon in the first house, or their moon in aspect to Mars, then there's going to be something about that energy that is likely to connect with that person. So you can um, kind of use a bunch of different things and kind of put them together to help you understand that person. So you can use this for yourself. You can use this to help you understand other people. And um, using the opposite sign, we'll talk a little bit about, how you can bring in more of the opposite sign to help you find balance. So part 2 is probably going to be on Vimeo, and I'm probably going to ask for a small donation in exchange for that video, but hopefully it's going to be helpful to you understanding your connection and yourself better. So if you need help figuring out what your moon sign is, stay tuned. The tutorial for that is coming up. And I may also post the tutorial separately too if I feel like people need it. Let me know in the comments what your questions are about the moon, or what are your questions about astrology? What would you like for me to talk about next? And I'll do my best to try and answer them. If there's a lot of questions, maybe I'll try and do some question and answers. Like I said, I don't really know how this is going to go, but your comments and questions certainly can help guide me. So if you'd like to have an astrology reading, you can contact me. I do natal chart readings and synastry readings. This is really the area of astrology that I focus on. It's what my passion is, because my readings really focus on your healing and your past life patterns and helping you move through those. So you can go to my website, which is twinstrology.com, and there's more information there. Yeah, I am doing a limited number of readings these days. So there can at times be a little bit of a wait, but if you don't mind that, then I would love to work with you. So sending you all so much love, and I will speak to you soon. Hey everyone, it's Marla. Hope that you're doing well. I had a few requests recently with people wanting to know how can they get a copy of their natal chart. So I decided I would do a little tutorial helping to walk you through how to do that. So if you go online, you can find thousands of free websites that will help you run your astrology chart, and any of those are fine. My preferred website is astro.com. No, I'm not getting any kickback from astro.com for saying this, but astro.com gives you a lot of different options, which is great.
It's also a little bit more complicated to run a chart on astro.com because there are so many options, and I think that's kind of what gets people confused. So, the first thing you want to do is go to astro.com, and you're probably going to need to sign in and create an account. But you can create a free account, and they will allow you to store so many, I don't remember how many it is, charts. And after that, you want to go to horoscopes and then extended chart selection. It's under drawings, calculations, and data. Okay, and that is where I am right now. And then under birth data, we can click on add a new person. Okay, and it's going to ask you for the birth data entry. Remember, when you're running a natal chart, you need to have the person's birthday, the month, the day, and the year, their birth time, and their birthplace. If you don't know the exact birthplace, you can sometimes get away with knowing the largest city close to that. Sometimes people are born in a small town and you're not sure of the name, but it's kind of close to a bigger city. Sometimes you're fine with doing that, but Astro does have a pretty large data bank of places. So you want to be absolutely as close as possible because you need the coordinates of the place to properly run the chart. Okay, so we're going to put in the information. I'm going to run a chart today for Brad Pitt. It's going to ask you for gender. It says female, male, event. Okay, and there are some things that you can do on here which uses a certain pronoun. So if you don't want a pronoun or if you want to use they, you can use event. Or if you're running a date, for example, rather than someone's birthday, let's say you want to run an event like the fall equinox, then you can just put it under event. But, you don't have to be real nitpicky about that. Brad was born on the 18th day of December in 1963. And we actually do have Brad's birth time. Whoops. It's 6:31 a.m. Apparently that's public record. And then it's going to ask you for country. There is a drop-down menu here with all the countries of the world, but you can just leave it at the whole world, and that's usually fine. Unless maybe you're not so sure, then you might want to put in the specific country. And then he was born in Shawnee, Oklahoma. So you see when I type in Shawnee, there's a lot of different places called Shawnee. Okay, so you can scroll through and you can find Shawnee, Oklahoma, which is here. Or you can also put a comma and the state abbreviation, and that will narrow it down for you. And you see it has the coordinates listed here. Sometimes if you're not sure, you can Google the city and it will actually show you what the coordinates are under, I think it's just like the general Google. It gives you coordinates. And you can always double check to make sure that the coordinates match. And then continue. Okay, and it brings us back to this extended chart selection. This is where people get confused because now it starts giving you a lot of options. Okay, but if you want to just do basic, okay, you want a round chart, you want a natal chart wheel, you want the web default style, You don't even need to worry about that. House system is default. You want to use the tropical zodiac, unless of course you want to draw a sidereal or a draconic, then you could highlight those, but this is for more advanced. You want geocentric, which means you're looking at the universe from the perspective of Earth, or heliocentric, which is from the perspective of the sun. Again, this is very advanced. So if you're just a beginner, you want tropical zodiac, geocentric. It gives you options for the nodes. You can use a true node or a mean node. I don't really want to get into that. There are different ways to calculate the north and south node. I personally prefer to use true node, but that's perfectly up to you. And I like to have not just the north node, but the south node actually drawn into the chart. So I write descending node as well. Choose if you want to put asteroids in or not. These are the most common asteroids. It asks you for the vertex. Again, if you're a beginner, you might want to just put in Chiron and then click to show the chart. And here we go. You can always check the heading to make sure that you entered everything okay. It gives you the chart method, the sun sign, and the ascendant sign. And what's nice about this is it gives you the name for all the different icons. Because you're going to see when you look at the chart that you just have these little glyphs. And if you're a beginner, you may not know what they all are. But if you look down here, it will tell you. Okay, so this is the sun. This is the moon. Of course, those ones are more obvious. Mercury, Venus, Mars, etc. Shows you what the nodes are. It shows you what Chiron looks like. And one of the reasons why I like astro.com is because it gives us the degrees right on the chart in an easy to read format. So what happens if you don't know someone's birth time? Well, you can still run a chart without birth time, but what it's not going to give you is these pieces of pie. These are called the houses, and the houses are calculated off the birth time. So let me show you what happens. If we go into edit birth data and we change this, now you can do two things here. You can use unknown birth time, or you can use 12 noon. And they both do the same thing because on astro.com, if you put in unknown, it's going to use 12 noon. And that's because that is midday, and that's going to give you kind of the average of the location of the moon. Okay, so you can see now without the birth time, it's taken away those pieces of the pie. Those houses are very important to how you're interpreting. And if your birth time is off even 5, 10, 15 minutes, it makes a difference in where the planets fall. And that's going to make a difference in how you interpret. So the safest thing to do, in my opinion, is to not use houses if there's any kind of question. If you want to see kind of those lines, if that makes you feel better, you can always use 12 noon, and that's going to draw the lines in for you, but you have to remember that those houses are not accurate houses. You can see here too, for time, it tells you 12 p.m., hypothetical. okay? And that is for that moon placement. You can see the moon is at 2538 here in Brad's chart. So let's do another little experiment. Let's go back to his proper birth time, which is 6:31 a.m. and take a look at his moon and what happened to it. So his moon here is at 2250 Capricorn. So it's still in the sign of Capricorn, but it's changed degrees, and that's because the moon moves very fast. It moves through a sign in an average of 2.5 days. So again, even a little shift in your time can move your moon a little bit. And that's going to become especially important if your moon falls on a cusp, because, if it was on the cusp, depending on the time of day that you're using to run the chart, it could be in Capricorn or it could be in Aquarius. So that is something to keep in mind. Without having the exact birth time, it really doesn't affect the other planets too much because they move much slower than the moon. The next fastest planet would be the sun, which moves on average 1 degree a day. So that's how you run a basic chart. So you may have to do a little bit of figuring out for your own moon if you don't have an exact birth time. So I'll just show you quickly. You can write other chart types. Again, this is going to be more advanced. If you're a beginner, just stick with natal chart wheel. But you can also run synastries here. You can run composite charts. You can show the transits on the outer wheel of your natal chart. You can do solar arcs. There's all kinds of things you can do. You can run a draconic chart. That's one of the reasons why I like Astro. It gives you so many different options. The chart drawing style, let's take a look and I'll just show you what another chart with their Astro-DNA style would look like. Okay, so you'll notice that the houses, things are a bit bolder, brighter, but one thing that it's changed is it's no longer giving you the degree right on the chart. So that's something that I really like. And that's why I use the web default. Let's take a look at classical style. Looks very much like the other style. And yeah, these other ones are getting very, very advanced. So if you have any questions, put them below and I'll do my best to answer them when I can. If you'd like to have a personal astrology reading with me, I do both natal chart and synastry chart readings. Synastry charts are when we compare two people's chart. It doesn't have to be a romantic connection either. I love to do synastry charts for parents and their children, or friends, or other types of family memberships. So other types of family members. You can also do comparison charts with specific dates too to see what was going on. So my website is Twinstrology. I'll link that below. And watch for more astrology videos with me on learning astrology and other ways that hopefully I can help expand your knowledge of astrology. And I will again link any of those videos that I posted below. Sending you all a lot of love, and I'll speak to you soon.